What are the 4 mistakes that can cause insulin resistance? Let's talk about it. Insulin resistance is a condition where insulin is being blocked by the cells unable to engage with the receptor sites. Your cells are making less insulin receptors, which means less glucose is escorted into your cells, so you make less energy. You become metabolically sluggish. Insulin resistance is often called prediabetes. Insulin resistance affects 130 million Americans. It contributes to obesity, fatigue, polycystic ovary syndrome, and reproductive issues. Insulin resistance often goes hand in hand with adrenal issues as well as thyroid issues. Here are 4 mistakes that can cause insulin resistance. Mistake number 1, not supporting your hypothalamus. Your hypothalamus controls your glucose metabolism. It controls how much glycogen your liver stores and how much lipids your liver produces, particularly triglycerides, which are packaged sugar to be stored in your fat cells. Your hypothalamus controls your cellular metabolism. It controls thyroid function, which controls your mitochondrial energy production. And your hypothalamus is vital in how your body deals with glucose and insulin. I have found that when patients take Genesis Gold to support their hypothalamus, that they are much less likely to develop insulin resistance, and those who do have insulin resistance are more likely to be able to increase their insulin sensitivity. Without hypothalamic support, diet and exercise does not work nearly as well. Mistake number 2, being sedentary. People who are not active, who sit around for hours, who do not exercise, do not move enough, do not utilize the calories they're taking in, are more likely to develop insulin resistance. Being sedentary means you have too much glucose floating around in your bloodstream. Hyperglycemia, or high blood sugar, taxes the pancreas as it tries to make more and more insulin to get that sugar into your cells, but eventually your cells become insulin resistant. Insulin resistance is a kind of survival technique. Your heart, for instance, can only use glucose to continue its function, to pump all your blood through your arteries. So it makes just enough insulin receptors to get just enough glucose in to be able to be an efficient pump for your body. If there's too much insulin and sugar floating around in your bloodstream, your heart will actually block its insulin receptors so it doesn't get too much glucose. Otherwise, it would grow, and a bigger heart is not a functional heart. In fact, an enlarged heart can lead to congestive heart failure. Insulin resistance is a natural way of protecting your organs that cannot use extra glucose. All that extra glucose should be packaged by your liver to go into fat storage. You can only store 400 calories worth of sugar in your muscles and liver. The rest must be stored in your adipose cells. And if you're not active and expending the energy that you're eating, you're going to increase your risk of insulin resistance. We know that aerobic activity and weight training can help decrease the risk of insulin resistance and actually help correct insulin resistance. Mistake number 3, eating too many high glycemic index carbs. Carbohydrates are not created equally. Yes, carbs are energy food, but some carbs are turned into sugar too quickly. We call those high glycemic index carbohydrates. Low glycemic index carbohydrates are turned into sugar very slowly, and high glycemic index carbs include sugar, baked goods, flour products, rice, pastas, white potatoes, basically anything white, and some fruits. The glycemic index is actually measured in relationship to consuming glucose. So if you eat 100 grams of pure glucose, we will see very high blood sugars floating around in your bloodstream very quickly. Glucose has a glycemic index score of 100. Starches like white flour products have very high glycemic index scores, usually over 90, and anything over 50 is considered high glycemic index. Quite a few fruits are lower glycemic index, like in the 30s or 40s, like berries. But watermelon, for instance, is a higher glycemic index fruit. Beans are a lower glycemic index food. And when you mix a high glycemic index food with a fat, like a little olive oil on that sourdough bread, it actually lowers the glycemic index somewhat because fat slows down the absorption of the glucose from the starchy food. Avoiding high glycemic index carbohydrates is very important in preventing insulin resistance and especially treating insulin resistance. If you have any questions about insulin resistance, please join me in our hormone support group where I answer your questions live, and you can get access by signing up for my free hormone reboot training. Mistake number 4 is not getting enough sleep. The sleep hormone melatonin naturally reverses insulin resistance. So if you're not getting enough sleep in the dark, you're much more likely to develop insulin resistance. Studies show that people who are sleep deprived have a very high risk of developing obesity, insulin resistance, and diabetes. You cannot make enough melatonin with the lights on. Turn off those screens after dusk and turn off all the lights once you're in bed. Getting enough sleep, avoiding high glycemic index carbs, being active, and supporting your hypothalamus will help reverse insulin resistance. I'll see you in the next video.